Hi, greetings everyone. So this is the second video in the Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra series. We're doing a very careful word-by-word translation of this original Śiva Tantra of the 9th century. And I'm very happy to be exploring this text with you all. By the way, for those who are in the Facebook group, usually these videos do happen on Friday, but this week it needs to be on Thursday. So apologies if you missed the live video, and at least you're watching the recording now. And they're always posted on YouTube shortly afterwards as well. So now we're at the end of verse 2 of our text, and now we come to a section that has been pretty much ignored by most translators who are translating the text precisely because they're interested in the less technical aspects of it, which have made it famous. But I think it's important that we encounter the concepts that the text fields right here at the beginning as possible answers to the question, what is the nature of ultimate reality? So as far as I know, none of the published sources really break these down with any clarity or any details. So I'm happy to be one of the first, perhaps, to do this, at least in public. So let's remember then. Bhairavi, the goddess, Bhairavi, asks Bhairava, her partner in crime, if you will, and her beloved, and in this case also her teacher. Remember, sometimes she's the teacher, sometimes he's the teacher. And as someone pointed out, the tradition actually says, really, Bhairavi, the goddess, in whatever form, under whatever name, she already knows the answer to her own question. She's the universal śakti, after all. But she asks the question for the benefit of us, for the benefit of those who are eavesdropping, as it were, on the whole conversation. So she's not asking out of ignorance. And we see, remember, in the very first verse, that Bhairavi said that she had heard everything Bhairava had taught, that she had heard the entire teaching of the Trika, she had heard the scriptures of the Trika and of Śiva Tantra in general up to that point. And so she's wondering, but my doubts are still not resolved, remember, she said. Now, what's the nature of ultimate reality? What's really the foundational reality, or the ground of being, the fundamental aspect of being? What is that which, if we know it experientially, there is nothing more that need be known? What is that which makes all other knowledge trivial by comparison? That's what I want to know about. So then she shows that she has in fact done her homework, and this is the new part we're coming to now, end of verse 2 into verse 3 as well as 4. She shows that she's done her homework by offering 7 possible answers to her own question. So Bhairavi says, what is the nature of ultimate reality? Is it this? 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 And she names 7 things. So she's really demonstrating, the student, as it were, is demonstrating to the teacher, I've done my homework, I've listened carefully, I know these are some possible answers to the question, and also I need more clarity. Is it one of these or something else altogether? We'll come to that, the answer to that question, right? But first, let's look at the 7 things that she proposes. So the end of verse 2, she offers her first answer, her first possible answer to the question, what is the ultimate reality? What is the foundational, what is that in which everything else is grounded? And so what's her first possibility? I'm putting it in your chat window. I'll also put it in the comments on the YouTube video. Her first possible answer is it the Shabda Rashi kāla? Is it the Shabda Rashi Kāla? What is that? The powers of the mass of phonemes, the kālas, the specific divisions of power expressed as the mass, the Rashi, of Shabda, of phonemes. This is very, very interesting now. So let's investigate a little bit more about what Shabda Rashi Kāla is. So Shabda Rashi is simply a synonym for matrika. Okay, so matrika means the power inherent in language, the power inherent in the phonemes of language, which are an expression of consciousness becoming aware of itself in a mature way. Because of that capacity, that vimarsha-śakti, we all have the power of language. But he's specifically, she specifically is saying Shabda Rashi Kāla, the powers represented by the phonemes of language. Now, we're fortunate to have Kshemarāja's commentary on this section of the text. We don't have his commentary for the whole text, but we have it for this section. And Kshemarāja clarifies exactly what is being talked about here. Remember, Kshemarāja is the author of the Recognition Sutras, which many of you have now read. So it's very fortunate to have his commentary. So he says, Shabda Rashi Kāla, the powers inherent in the massive phonemes, really means the vimarsha shaktis, the potencies of self-aware consciousness that are the fundamental and universal pulsations. He actually says this word spada, pulsation of energy. So they're the fundamental pulsations of all of reality, divided into two main classes, signifiers and signifieds, meaning words and that which they denote. So again, he says, we're talking here about the powers or potencies of self-aware consciousness expressed as the fundamental pulsations of energy, the universal pulsations of energy, consisting of words and that which they point towards or denote, all of them all together, all of them in an all-encompassing, all-embracing manner. I'm translating direct from the commentary now. And then he goes on to say, that this vimarsha-śakti, this power of self-awareness, the power by which consciousness comes to know itself, is inherent within consciousness. So he says, that Bhairavi proposes Shabda Rashi Kāla as the ultimate reality, possibly, precisely because this capacity within consciousness to become aware of itself is inherent within all embodied beings, all forms of consciousness. So he says it's because, she's making this proposition because of the inherence of this power of self-awareness within the Bhairava that is consciousness. Bodha Bhairava, a synonym for Vijnana-Bhairava. So yeah, as Gerald mentions in the comments, it's totally semiotics. It's the world of signifier and signifieds as encompassing the whole of reality. Okay, but he wants to also mention that the building blocks of these of all this are these pulsations of energy that give rise to both the words and that which they point to. And what are these pulsations of energy? He says, anuttara, ananda, icchā, ishana, and so on, meaning to say each phoneme of language actually represents, embodies, and expresses a specific shakti or potency within consciousness. So going in the order of the Sanskrit phonemes, and I'm moving fast here, I realize, I'm summarizing rapidly, but going in the order of the Sanskrit phonemes, the first phoneme, expresses and embodies anuttara-śakti, the power of the absolute, meaning the base consciousness that gives rise to everything. Ananda is so the first two letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. Ananda, the power of bliss, power inherent within consciousness to simply revel in itself, to enjoy being itself, that within being consciousness there is inherent bliss or joy. And then icchā, the power of will or urge towards self-expression. So I could go on, obviously we don't have time for this, but I could go on and enumerate all the shaktis that every single letter of the alphabet represents, embodies, and expresses. So he just mentions the first three: a, I, anuttara, ananda, icchā. And I will post a handout that enumerates the rest of them so that you have that. So you see, this is actually a viable candidate for the ultimate reality, because the powers of the mass of phonemes actually refers to those fundamental pulsations of consciousness that give rise not only to all language, but also to all experience, all phenomenological experience. So the tradition sees a root, a common root of shaktis that give rise to both signifiers and signifieds, and that if there wasn't a common root of signifiers and signifieds, words and what they denote, then words couldn't denote. They wouldn't have the power to denote if there wasn't a fundamental root, these spadas, these pulsations of energy, which then of shakti, that express as both. So anyway, that's a brief and rapid summary. It's covered in much more detail in my Patreon webinars if you want to become a member of Patreon. Absolutely, yes. Ashton asks, is this synonymous with icchā-śakti? Yes. We're talking about matrika, shabda-rashi, same thing. The powers embodied and expressed by the mass of phonemes, the Sanskrit syllabary or the Sanskrit alphabet. Okay, so I could do this whole video on this one quarter verse, because this is the last quarter of verse 2. This is how deep things can go, and this section of the text is deep. Why? Why is it so deep when later it's going to have these very, very simple, accessible daily life practices? Well, that's exactly the point. There's a kind of gate. What's the term for that in English? That a kind of threshold that you have to pass. Like you encounter the stuff, and it's like, oh, do you already know about this? Because if you don't, the practices that come, though they seem very, very simple, are actually not going to have the same power if you don't grasp some of the background that the text is building on and transcending. Okay, so next thing, she said, is it shabda-rashi kāla? And now we move on to verse 3, and I'll give you verse 3 in your window. And she proposes two more possibilities. Well, kind of 3, kind of 2, you'll see, in verse 3. So let's sing verse 3. Kim va Navātma-bhairava Triśiro-bhairava Triśiro-bhairava va kim va icchā-śakti trayātmakam. So what this means is, I'll just give you the literal translation first. Two seconds. She's already said, does the ultimate reality consist of the powers of language? Or, verse 3, amongst the terrifying forms of bhairava, amongst the awe-inspiring forms of bhairava, is the ultimate reality Navātma-bhairava. Or, and then she does another one. So you'll see there in the verse, she's talking about Navātma-bhairava-bhairava. Among these awe-inspiring forms of consciousness, is the ultimate reality Navātma-bhairava. Now, many of you have never heard of Navātma-bhairava, who is a deity and also a mantra and also a set of 9 tattvas, a set of 9 principles of reality. And the reason you haven't, oh yeah, I didn't paste the translation yet, sorry. The reason you haven't heard of Navātma-bhairava is because it's a very, very, very important element of the ancient tantric tradition that it did survive into the later period, but is not well known. So let's just talk a little bit about Navātma-bhairava. So first of all, Navātma having 9 aspects or 9 selves, if you will, referring to the 9 tattvas, the 9 aspects of reality that this form of divine consciousness assumes. And so what are those? I'll put those in the window. The 9 tattvas of Navātma-bhairava are, sorry for any typos, prakģti, puruşa, niyati meaning causality, kāla meaning time, māyā meaning the creative power of consciousness to emanate a universe, not illusion, vidyā meaning liberative insight, icchā, God, sadāśiva, a more transcendental form of God, Śiva, an even more transcendental form of God that is universal and all-encompassing. So those are the 9 tattvas that form Navātma-bhairava. So later I'll comment and translate those terms so that you have those. Now, Navātma-bhairava is a specific form of Bhairava also as a deity. And where does he appear? He appears in the Trika as the consort of Aparā Devi, the goddess, the fierce goddess who looks like Kali in the Trika. He's her consort. And then later he appears as the consort of Kubjika. If any of you have studied with Mark Dishkovsky, he's the world's foremost Kubjika scholar, this specific form of the goddess, which is highly multivalent and polysemous. And her consort, Kubjika's consort, is Navātma-bhairava. And that's how he appears in the later tradition as a subordinate consort to Kubjika. So that's a little bit about Navātma-bhairava. I could do a whole video on him and his mantra. Well, that's actually supposed to be secret, so I probably wouldn't do it on Facebook. But we don't have time for that, as I think Trevor Noah says. We don't got time for that. So that's just a little bit about Navātma-bhairava. In the year 850, when this text appeared, he was certainly a candidate, or that collocation of realities was a candidate for the ultimate, the ultimate deity, as it were. Okay, so next, what does she say? She says, or is the ultimate reality the trinity of śaktis, the 3 goddesses of the Trika, that also constitute the 3 heads or 3 aspects of the 3-headed Bhairava, Triśiro-bhairava, another Bhairava form that's been more or less forgotten. Okay, so let me put this in your chat window. Who are the 3 goddesses of the Trika? Parā, Parāparā, and Aparā. Some of you have heard of them, some of you haven't. But here, as you can see in your chat window, and I'll put this in the YouTube video too, they each correspond to each of several sets of 3. So we have the set of 3 of icchā, jñāna, kriyā, will, knowing, and acting. We have the set of 3 of sṛṣṭi, sthiti, samhara, emanation, stasis, and reabsorption. We have the set of three of pramātā, pramāna, prameya, knower, knowing, and known. We have the set of three of non-dual, duality subsumed within a greater unity, and duality, abheda, bheda, and bheda. And then we have the set of three of śiva-śakti and nāda, individuality, individual soul, if you will. So these sets of three, all of them correspond to the three goddesses of the Trika, Parā, Parāparā, and Aparā. And you can read all about them in the relevant chapter of Tantra Illuminated, the Trika chapter. So when Bhairavi proposes the three goddesses as the ultimate reality, she is also proposing the various sets of three that they correspond to, which again are in the window. No, we do not see, Aubrey asks, we do not see the correspondence to Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. That's a Puranic thing. That's later. It's non-tantric. It's a whole different thing. So we don't see that set of three. We see these sets of three that are in your chat window. And again, I'll need to translate those for you after the fact if you don't already know them. So these three goddesses are also a viable candidate for the nature of ultimate reality in terms of the sets of three that they represent, right? Which are all encompassing. Knower, knowing, and known. There's nothing in the universe that's not a knower, a known, or a process of knowing. There's nothing in the universe of conscious experience anyway, which is the only universe we have access to. Okay, so that's all I'll say about that for now. But please do read about these three goddesses in Tantra Illuminated. And again, they also correspond to Śiva-śakti and individual soul, which also subsume the whole universe in those three categories. Maybe that's all we have time for today. I thought we would get to the next verse. Okay, we can just do the first pada of the next verse, where she gives one more proposition for the nature of ultimate reality, and that is nāda and bindu. Okay, so I'll just give you that little bit of verse 4. Does the ultimate reality consist of, and I'll come to your questions in just a moment. Does the ultimate reality consist of the resonance and the point, nāda and bindu? Now, what does she mean by this? Well, Kshemaraja to the rescue, because he explains some about how we should understand nāda and bindu. He says it's bindu represents prakāsha, the light of consciousness, the power inherent within consciousness to manifest all the objects of its experience. That is what bindu represents, that a bindu is a singularity, a single point of ultimacy that then manifests a whole world of experience. So the bindu is both the singularity at the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang singularity, but it's also the fertilized egg, that becomes a human being and all their life experiences. That's also a bindu. So, and the same pattern on all scales. So this bindu, this point of ultimacy that diversifies into a world of conscious experience. That's prakāsha, the light of consciousness in its capacity to manifest a universe of experience. And then nāda, he says, Kshemaraja says, is associated with and expresses parāmarsha or vimarsha, the power of self-awareness. Because what's nāda? Nāda is a resonance, a sonic resonance, a sonic vibration, the subtlest aspect of mantra. And so that is representative of the power of self-awareness, which mantra in its highest form expresses. And more can be said about this, and probably will be said about video. So then he also says, by the way, back to this issue of signifier and signified, where nāda represents all possible words too, because nāda again means sonic resonance, right? And there's a book that came out called, Nāda Brahma, the world as vibration sound. So the idea, nāda as resonance or vibration, sonic resonance, manifests as all words whatsoever, and then bindu manifests as all the things that the words signify and point to, all the objects of experience. Like I already said, this is just the same thing said in different words, okay? So he says in his commentary, Kshemaraja, he gives us one of his ultra-long Sanskrit compounds. It's longer than most, and just for fun, I'll read it. He says, Sarva mantra chakra samanya viryātmaka vishva vācya vibhaga prakasha rupa bindu ashesha vachaka vibhaga parāmarsha māyā nadatmakam. That's all one compound word. Where he says that this the bindu expresses the light of consciousness, undivided from all the all the signifieds, all the objects of experience, and the bindu is also that which empowers, is the universal empowerer of the mass of all the mantras, whereas nāda manifests the self-aware capacity of consciousness, the capacity of consciousness to be self-aware, and is undivided from all the possible words or signifiers. So that's what he says there. Yeah, really deep, really interesting, really amazing stuff. So this is all right there to be seen in the commentary. I'm not over-interpreting it. I'm not trying to make it modern or whatever. This is really how they talk about the nature of reality. Okay, so we've done then the very end of verse 2, all of verse 3, the very beginning of verse 4. Any questions? And I do realize that I ran through these concepts pretty quickly, and I will follow up to explain a little bit more. Kirili asks, if the ultimate reality is that which is indivisible, then why would she be speculating on all these divisions? Well, the answer to that is coming up, okay? But what we, the answers that she's provided so far, pretty much assume a abheda view, meaning to say a view in which unity is marked by some key forms of diversity. That unity subsumes diversity, but diversity is a very significant aspect of the overarching unity. This is different from Vedanta then, which just denies diversity. It denies these divisions, if you will. And so the kind of question you're asking, Kirili, which I'm sure others have, coming from this sort of Vedanta. Here in Tantra, we have no problem in saying there's one which is internally diverse. Like there's one human species which is diversified by ethnicities, for example. And we want to celebrate that diversity. We want to honor that diversity, not deny it or dismiss it just for the sake of the overarching unity. But at the same time, we want to acknowledge the overarching unity. We're one species. We're one humanity. That's more fundamental than the various demographics that internally differentiate that unity, okay? So in the same way, when she's talking about 50 pulsations of energy that give rise to language and what language represents, the Shabda Rashi Kāla, then that she's saying, is that the most important internal diversity of the one? Or is it the most important internal diversity of the one, the most fundamental, the ninefold division of Navātma-bhairava? Or is the most fundamental division of the one, and it's not division, right? It's just it's a bad word. The most fundamental internal diversification of the one, is it the three goddesses of the Trika? Or is it the two, nāda and bindu? So that's as far as we've got. And as you know, if you've peeked ahead in the text, Bhairava's answer is going to be, actually, it's none of these. And we'll come to that. While all of these are certainly very, very, very important to the tradition. Okay, so I can't say I comprehend all of these comments, skimming through them, but Federico asks, where are the comments of Kshemarāja from? They're not from the Recognition Sutras. They are from its own text. It's a manuscript of the Vijnana-bhairava-tantra, with Kshemarāja commenting on part of it and someone else commenting on the rest, because Kshemarāja's commentary was lost after the opening philosophical portion of the text. Or maybe he never wrote it. Maybe he just wanted to comment on the opening philosophical portion of the text. I don't know. But what is remarkable is that there's 24 translations of the Vijnana-bhairava-tantra out there, and almost none of them, maybe one, seems to have actually consulted the commentary. And we have a genius. We have Kshemarāja telling us what the text means, at least for these opening difficult verses, before it gets easier. And that's like a gold mine right there. And I've just been translating, on the fly, straight from his commentary. And so it's, it's a bit scandalous that people would publish a translation without intimately familiarizing themselves with what he says about this key text. Okay. That's good for now. Stay with it, and it's okay if it's confusing in this section. There's a lot of powerful and heavy concepts, and then we kind of get rewarded. We get rewarded by our philosophical climbing of the philosophical mountain. We get rewarded after that in a really beautiful way with some exquisite, heart-meltingly nectarian verses. So yes, we are getting closer to the pot of nectar, for whoever said that. Okay. Thank you all for your comments. And we'll see you next time. We'll see you next week. Om. And let's finish with just chanting the relevant section one more time. Where did it go? Here, I'll paste it again so that you have it handy. Okay, let's just chant verse 3 in the beginning of 4. Kimva Navātma-bhedena bhairave-bhairava kritau Triśiro-bhairava va icchā-śakti trayātmakam nāda bindu mayam vapi. And that's where we've got to. Om namo vaha Śivaste pantanaha santu. May your path be filled with blessings.